Hello, everyone, and welcome to Your Mind, Your Reality, Your Results, a weekly live show where I speak with an expert on the subject of mindset so you can change your mindset and ultimately get the amazing results that you want in your life. I'm so pleased to be welcoming JB to the show today. Welcome.
Thank you, Leah. It's a pleasure. Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Well, if you guys haven't seen the show before, haven't met me, my name's Leah Fink. I'm the owner and founder of All Thrive, and I help protect people from the pain of damaged relationships. If you want to know some more about that, please connect with me as I would love to have a conversation. But you're not just here for me today, you are here for JB and his expertise, and you want to take advantage of it. So if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to throw those in. If you're watching this show and we're no longer live, you can still put those in. We can make sure to get back to you with that information. So to start off, I always love asking people how they got to be, the expert that they are today. So do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a kind of combination of things, Leah. My name of my company is Beyond Field Coaching, and I'll tell you how that came about. But I'm a international inspirational speaker and speaker coach. I started speaking a little over 20 years ago. I started with this company called Making It Count. Okay. It was sponsored by a company called Monster.com. Some of you may remember Monster.com. But my speaking career started one day. I'm sitting around back in the early 2000s, and I'm like, well, let me look up public speaking. And so I found this website. Found this website on public speaking. It said speaking in schools to high school students. I'm like, I can do that. I was involved with the youth group. I do a lot of youth coaching, so I love working with young people. I can do that, and I wanted to get into speaking. Now I'd never spoken before, but anyway, so all I had to do was send in a resume and a 2-minute video of me speaking. Well, I did that, and I have no idea what I spoke on that day, Leah. And my fear is that video is floating out there somewhere. I'm hoping they destroyed it. I'm not sure. But anyway, so I sent that out, and I didn't hear anything from them for a couple of months. And I was like, okay, well, maybe that video was worse than I thought. Wasn't sure. And then about 3 months later, I got an email. They invited me to their speaker training. And I walk into that speaker training. It's like 200 other people in the room. Speakers are all across the country. Some with experience, some with not. And I just felt like I had died and gone to heaven. I was in a room full of my people. And that's how my speaking career got started. And I was so blessed to have some incredible training and learn from some incredible trainers. So that's how my speaking career got started. It has advanced along the way over the last 20 plus years. From that organization to an organization called Rachel's Challenge. I spoke with them, to me, building my own platform of speaking, which I do now as I speak around the country to different entrepreneurial groups and CEO groups. So that's how my speaker got started. I'm also a sports coach by design. I started out sports coaching, coached my son in basketball and football, and then I coached girls fast pitch softball for several years. I had my own organization. And then when all of my athletes kind of aged out, I started looking around because I realized I had a gift and a passion for coaching. And so I started looking around like, what do I want to do? What I want to do? I still want to do some coaching. And I discovered life coaching. I didn't know at that time, I didn't know it was a thing. And so I found life coaching, got certified as a life coach, started off in the just general life coaching with people, moved into success coaching, executive coaching. And now I focus specifically on speaker coaching, and specifically helping entrepreneurs who want to use speaking as a marketing tool to grow their business. And so I help them craft that presentation in the correct way. So I do that. And then I also work with executive leadership teams, helping them improve their executive presence as they're standing in front of an audience of people, whether they're presenting about their company or their product. How can they do that better? How can they increase their conversion rate? All of those things. And so that's how I got into coaching. And for me, when I started coaching and I was already a speaker, it was just a natural thing to combine the two and use speaking as the marketing tool for me growing my business, generating leads, and all of those things.
Wow. That's Thank you for sharing your story. That's a really interesting journey how you got here. And the one piece that you mentioned, which I would like you to delve a little bit more into, is, you mentioned the fear of that first speaking video still floating around. And, one of the world's, the top fears in the world beyond death is public speaking. Did you have that experience of being scared stepping into that space, or you seem to have said, oh yeah, I just decided I was going to become a public speaker?
That's very interesting. It wasn't quite like that. I didn't really realize that I was going to become a professional public speaker. I knew that I wanted to do something, especially working with youth, which is where I started. And I enjoyed speaking, but not as much as I do now. And you're right. I've heard that a lot, and I've experienced that with other people, where speaking is just really is one of the things that people are most afraid of. And when I first started, I was afraid, and I started asking myself, well, what am I afraid of? Because just like everybody else, when you start something new, you're afraid or whatever. But I did jump into it, and I'll tell you what, the support from my speakers and speaker coaches and trainers at that first training was phenomenal. But I realized, I said, so I was afraid when I get up. And so my question to myself, Leah, was, well, what am I afraid of? And for me, it was making a mistake, messing up, getting up there and messing up. And so I said, well, how can I eliminate that? Prepare. And so I started the habit of preparing as best I could. And from there, there's nothing else I can do. Just go up there and get it done, right? And so, but that habit has served me well, and that took away a lot of the anxiety and fear around getting in front of people, because I convinced myself that if I prepare to my highest level, then there's not anything else I can do but go out there and do the best I can. And it has served me well. So,
what a good point. And what I really like about that fact of preparing or practicing is so true. And nowadays, with the way that we are all online, there's so many opportunities for people to even if it's not even practicing a specific speech, but get out in front of people and practice the art of speaking to people and presenting yourself. So what a cool starting point to make, that it's just getting that kind of into your system.
Right. I used to tell my players this, and I tell my clients this: no matter what you do in life, you want to get good at it, you got to put in the work, you got to put in the hours. It goes back to Malcolm Gladwell's book. He talks about in his book Outliers. To be an expert at something, it takes 10,000 hours. 10,000 hours, and you see a lot of people who are experts at things, but we don't see the 10,000 hours they put in to get to that point. There's no shortcuts to being really, really good at something. We'd like to think so, because we live in that society where we can throw things in our microwave and it's done quickly. But that doesn't happen with getting good at doing something, with success.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot more people talk about talent than they do about skill. Talent just being, naturally talented versus something that they had to cultivate and practice and work at for hours and hours and hours.
Exactly. That's a very good point. And you can have a lot of talent, but if you want to get really good at something, it takes putting in those hours combined with those talent. Man, when you do that, you're talking about that's how you can become the best at something, when you take your talent and then your work ethic and you just hammer it and get really good at it and work it, learn from your mistakes, which people are afraid to do. But you learn from your mistakes, surround yourself with people who are doing it so you can learn from them, whether it be a coach or a mentor, and that's how we get better.
Fantastic. Well, so now that we know this is how to do it, I guess we should kind of start too with why, like for all the entrepreneurs and executive leaders out there that are going, public speaking's not for me, I don't need to do that. What would you say to them? Why do you think it's so important that they start speaking as a way of marketing?
I'll tell you what, first of all, the lane's going to be wide open, because 9 out of 10 people out there listening to my voice are going to talk themselves out of doing it. Okay. So it's an opportunity for you to set yourself apart from what you consider your competition. That's the first thing. But when you're in front of a group of people speaking, and you're talking about your business, you're talking about how you solve a problem for your clientele, your ideal clients, it brands you as the expert. Okay, that's the first thing. It brands you as an expert, but then it also creates incredible leverage. Okay, because as entrepreneurs, we get out there and we network, right? Yeah. But just imagine taking that same message that you do in a one-on-one conversation, putting it in a signature presentation, and sharing it to 100 people, to 1,000 people at one time. Now you created leverage. And when you do it correctly, not only do you create leverage, but you generate leads. It's an incredible lead generator. So brand yourself as the expert, you create the leverage, and you generate leads, consistent leads. That's why I would say anyone asking, why should I create a signature presentation and get out there and speak, whether it be a service or a product you want to promote, it's the best way to do it.
Well, we're on a show together right now, so I do completely agree with you. It's really important to have that voice out there, that expertise. And the hard part for a lot of people might be this idea of that signature presentation, or making sure that they're giving a talk that does bring those leads in, that does, represent themselves the way they want to be represented. Do you have any tips for people as they're starting out, or even maybe they're experienced speakers, a couple tips that they should keep in mind while they're doing that?
Yeah, I do. That's a great question as well, Leah. I always tell my clients when I work with them, one of the first questions I ask them, whether they're beginning speakers or experienced speakers, I always ask them, what's the purpose of your presentation? Okay. So always know the purpose of your presentation. And what I mean by that is, what do you want the audience to do differently when they hear you speak? Okay. What do you want them to, what action do you want them to take? So here's what I mean by that. And I learned this, we talk about making mistakes. Well, I learned this firsthand because when I first started speaking as a mode for growing my business, I would get out there and I would speak and I would inspire the hell out of people. Okay. However, I wasn't converting because I didn't have my presentation designed the right way. And it wasn't until I met an incredible speaker coach that showed me how to do that. Okay. So what's the purpose? Is your purpose to inspire the audience only? Then, okay, the presentation needs to be designed that way. Okay. Is the purpose to inspire, educate? Then the presentation needs to be crafted that way. But if the purpose is to inspire, educate, entertain, and also convert, meaning I want the audience to buy my book, meaning I want the audience to join my retreat or my workshop, whatever the case may be, my coaching program, then that presentation also has to be designed and crafted a certain way if you want to get the maximum results from that presentation. So the first thing I would say is ask yourself, what's the purpose of my presentation? And for my experienced speakers out there, I say this: make sure that your focus is on what you're giving to the audience, not what you're getting from the audience. Okay. A lot of times as experienced speakers, we forget that because we get out there and we're paid to be out there. But we forget that our purpose is to give the audience a gift. So what gift are you giving your audience when you're on that stage speaking? So that's one of the things that I would say from my experienced speakers.
I love that you added that piece at the end, because that's always the balance, isn't it? Of everyone comes from this heartfelt place of wanting to share the message that they think is important. And also you sometimes get caught up in all the other stuff that comes with it. So I'm wondering, because you're talking about a signature presentation, do you recommend that people really hone in on kind of like their one topic or their expertise, or do you suggest that they have a couple talks, or do you suggest they have one that they, kind of adapt to every situation they're in? What would you say for that?
That's a great question. I say you have one signature presentation that you start with, especially if you're a beginner. Okay. Myself, I have three, but remember, I've been doing this for over 20 years. Okay. But all three of those speak to my two target markets. And so that's the key thing. And then the other thing, they speak on what I'm good at, what my expertise is, what I call my superpower. So you want to speak about what you know. One of my mentors, Brian Tracy, I heard him say years ago, never get in front of an audience and speak on something you know nothing about, right? And so for people beginning, I'd say focus on one signature presentation. And this is the other thing that I tell people, Leah, whether you want to get out there and speak on a live stage or not, having a signature presentation and having it put together the right way is very important, because then you can always, whether you speak on a stage or not, you'll always use, you may never use that signature presentation in a forum,
yeah,
but you always use pieces of it. Okay, you may use the story or share different stories that you use throughout your signature presentation in a conversation on a podcast. Okay, you may share some of your content that you share in that signature presentation with a small group of people. So you'll always use pieces of it, even if you never put it together. So I call it's like your Swiss Army knife in your marketing toolbox. Okay.
Totally.
Because you never know if somebody say, hey, I got a small group of 10 people. I'd love you to come do a little presentation. And you're like, well, I've never done a presentation, but man, I got this signature presentation in my toolbox. Let me go ahead, dust it off and give it a shot, right? So totally. You just never know. So I think you should have a signature presentation, whether you plan to use it right away, later on, or never. You always use pieces of it.
I think that's so true. That plays again into this piece of being practiced, being prepared, which just looks professional on top of that.
Right.
And I'm curious because you mentioned both this idea of, when you're speaking to your target client, who, of course, if you're trying to work to convert to sell, that's who you want to be speaking in front of. And you also mentioned, what if someone calls you up and says, here's my, 10 friends, and you don't know if they're your target market, maybe you know that they're not. Would you recommend that people just keep, like, when they have the opportunities, get in front of those audiences? Or do you think it's more important to really specify and try to find the engagements that are specifically your market?
It really depends on where you are in your journey. If you're a beginning speaker, I say what one of my mentors always said: speakers speak. You got to get out there and speak. And many of us, when we first started, we spoke at Rotary clubs and Lions clubs, because there's no substitute for stage time. Okay. To practice. So if you're a beginning speaker and you don't have that stage time, you just got to get out there and speak. So whether it's speaking in front of 10 friends, whatever the case may be, they may not be your target audience, but you're getting the reps. You're learning, you're getting comfortable sharing your message in front of people. You're learning how different things in your presentation land with the audience, okay? And then you're getting the feedback, okay? So that's helpful, especially, and feedback is helpful no matter what level you're at, right? But when you first start, it's about stage time. And then you can also move into working in front of and speaking in front of your target audience. For the advanced speaker, you're advanced, you've been doing this for a while, you're clear on your target market, target audience, you're clear on the problem that you solve for them, and you've got the stage time, then it's about focus. It's about focusing on right message, right audience, so you can get the right result.
Awesome. Well, I especially love that you mentioned feedback. This is one of my favorite words. I do lots of teaching people how to cultivate really healthy, useful feedback. What does that look like in the speaking world? How do new speakers get that feedback? Or do you even have a system where you're still seeking feedback from your audiences?
Well, most good speakers do. I do, because I have a speaker coach and I have colleagues that are in the speaking world as well. So I would recommend, if you don't have the feedback, get somebody in your circle, whether it be another speaker that's a colleague, whether it be a speaker coach or mentor, someone that you can say, look, can I send you a short snippet of this presentation I just did? I'd love to get your feedback on it. I do that for all my clients. Okay. Yeah. I have them videotape their presentation, whether it's in front of an audience, whether it's in front of a mirror, it doesn't matter, so that we can analyze it. Video is one of the best teachers, and I use it a lot with my clients, giving them that feedback as they go and as they grow.
Yeah. No, that's so important. I mean, I'm part of a community to practice the same thing, get that feedback on speaking. So 100% agree. It's super important. And what would you say? Because the reality is, people are going to start out speaking. They're going to have that amazing talk that they have, and they feel like $1 million going off the stage, and they might have one where they kind of walk off the stage going, like, have you had that experience? And what would you?
Are you kidding me?
If they're not getting the impact that they want for that, even for the one show, right? Like, how do you keep going after that?
Hey, Leah, let me tell you something. Are you kidding me? You know how long? You remember how long I've been speaking, right? I've had those moments, and the more you do something, you're gonna have those moments, and it's how you perceive those moments first of all, okay, and then it's how you respond to them. A lot of people will spend a lot of time beating themselves up, okay. However, the best way for me and anyone that I know, the best is use it as a teaching moment. Because it's one thing that I know. Yeah, I've had that moment once. You know why? Because once I had that moment, I promised I'd never have that moment again. It was a huge teaching point, but it was a point in my career that took me from here to here, because I was able to look and analyze what caused that. Okay, what can I do differently that I don't, have that feeling of being unprepared, of making big mistake, or whatever the case may be, right? Maybe I said something, or I tried something in that presentation that didn't work. You're gonna do that. That's just gonna happen. But those are great moments, because you're like, okay, well, that crap didn't work. let me throw that one out, and I'll try this. And so it's all about teaching moments, but have the perspective that, hey, I just learned something. I learned what didn't work and what does.
I love that. That's so true. That growth mindset is absolutely critical. And speaking of this, Greg's joined us. Thank you for joining us, Greg. And he's saying, we're seeing a decline in the effectiveness of webinars. Do you have a suggestion on how to refine the medium? And I feel that fits in quite well to this idea of sometimes things might not hit like you're hoping to. Webinars certainly a chance to speak that it sounds like are becoming, people maybe over webinared right now. Do you have any ideas about that?
You know what? That's an interesting question, that there's a decline in webinars. I to be honest with you, I think a lot of it has to do with online fatigue. We're coming out of this pandemic where all of our connection was condensed to online, Zoom, that sort of thing. Yeah. So I don't know for sure, but that's just my perspective and my guess that it's some online fatigue, because like myself, people realize just how important live connections are, right? And getting back to those, people are really, I know for me, I can say I'm really excited to get back on the live stages. But I would say that may be a contributing factor, is people are probably just fatigued of the online presence. And so they're moving away from it. But I think it'll circle back, as most things do. And so if you're out there doing webinars and you're not seeing the results, don't get discouraged. Don't stop. Just figure out how you can continue to make yours better and market it to the right audience.
Well, and maybe along those lines, because you're talking about that online fatigue and this challenge that people might be having, because I'm assuming you've been speaking online as well during the pandemic, did you adapt your speaking, or do you have tips for people when they're speaking online versus in person? Because we are, still going to stay, I think, a bit blended. Like you said, we're going to be back online. People are going to stay in both mediums. Is it different to speak in those?
It is different. And I was one of those guys that went kicking and screaming. I'm just gonna be upfront with you. I did a few virtual events, but nothing replaces live, and that's just what I love to do. But I did do, and you have to make that adjustment and those different tweaks, because it's different, right? And so there's different ways in which you keep the audience engaged, and one of those ways is having a really, really good moderator to monitor the chat box, okay, so that you can do your presentation, but they can engage with the audience, right? And so that's one of the key things that I learned about doing the online version, is making sure that you have a good team helping you, okay, so that you can throw out questions. Someone else can throw out questions and statements as you're doing your presentation, engaging with the audience. Okay, and there's different ways to engage with the audience. It's a bigger challenge online than it is live to engage the audience, but there's ways you can do that. And there's ways you can structure your presentation to do that as well, whether it be doing a Q&A throughout, at the end, that sort of thing. If you know people in the audience, maybe getting them to interject in some kind of way, whether it be in a conversation throughout your presentation. There's different ways to do it, but it definitely takes practice and skill.
Totally. And I really like that you mentioned that piece of how important it is in speaking. I think a lot of people think of speaking as I am telling you and you're listening, which is kind of a passive role. Whereas what you're talking about now is that engagement piece is so critical. Like, who wants to just listen to someone tell them things for a while without thinking, oh, how does this apply to my life? Oh, do they actually care about why this matters to me? So the fact that you mentioned that is so critical, even in online, where everyone's gotten used to like talking to the black Zoom screen.
Yeah, that's so annoying, by the way. I'm so over that one.
That's really, and that importance too of having, I actually even also love the idea, especially if you're online, of having maybe even some multiple supports, right? Someone who is moderating the chat, someone who's making sure to have their video on and interject some ideas to you saying, oh, that's a great, just that kind of person who's keeping the movement.
Yeah.
Because it is really hard to have black screen, no one responding in text, and to keep motivated as a speaker, I'm guessing, is pretty tough in that context.
It's very tough. So, and having those little tips and tricks are so key, as well as if you're using the PowerPoint, knowing how to use it on that online version as opposed to being live.
Awesome. Well, we are starting to come near the end of our time, and I want to make sure that if I missed a question of something that you're like, man, people need to think about this, know this for speaking, what have I missed? What would you recommend to everyone?
I'll tell you what, Leah, I don't know if you missed anything. You're a superstar, girl.
Well, thank you. You talk about practice. I started the show over a year ago now. It's funny when you do interviews every week, you get that practice. Same with speaking. You just have to do your reps and learn how to do it.
You did good. You did good. I mean, I can't think of anything at the top of my head. I feel like we covered a broad spectrum and did a good job. And thank you for teeing me up.
Oh, well, it was very much my pleasure. I knew, right when we met, I really appreciated, your approach. And I completely agree. Like, if I could reiterate JB's point to all the entrepreneurs and anyone who's really trying to represent themselves, an idea, speaking and putting yourself out there, as scary as it may be, it's critical. It's what people want to understand you, to engage with you. So yeah, that it's just such a great message you're sharing.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share it as well.
Yeah. So if people are curious and, they want to get in touch, maybe they're curious about the coaching or have some questions, what's the best way to do that?
Absolutely. You can email me at jb@beyondthefieldcoaching.com. You can also find it on my website, beyondthefieldcoaching.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn and Facebook as well. JB Braden, Braden. Reach out. You can DM me. I love talking to people. I love setting up a time to chat. If you have any questions about how I can help you, whether it be put together a signature presentation, whether it be help you as a speaker, tune up your presentation, whatever the case may be, I'm here for you. And I can definitely love to have a chat with you and talk about how we can get you out there in front of people and generate those leads and help the people you want to help.
Awesome. And we do have your contact info in the description as well if people are looking for it. I really appreciate it. I really recommend you reach out. JB's great. He's super generous with his knowledge and just obviously a ton of experience in the field. So thank you so much for sharing that with us today.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
And thank you all for watching. We will see you next week. And remember, every thought counts.